She's asking me questions when we have
3 seconds. He goes, no, I'm sorry.
Okay, anyway, this is Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie. Good to see you this morning. We were talking baby names earlier on. And bad ones, the worst baby names listed, which actually were all very nice, I thought.
Yeah, we quite like them.
So we've got Mia, Cameron, Claudia, Alexa, Lana, Fanny, Flora, Luna, Graham and Mercedes. Right? And they're the worst baby names. And I think, frankly, they're all right. I don't know what the problem is.
They're not too bad, but it's got you talking at home, hasn't it?
Jacqueline says, Jacqueline's a retired midwife. Great job. Those are not bad baby names, she says. Ask any midwife. I'm retired now, but in my time, I've come across Stormy River, Axe and Blade, who were twins, Chlamydia, Candida, which is a fungal infection, Melena, which is blood in your stools, and her all-time favourite, KFC, the parents' favourite fast food. She says she could go on.
Jacqueline, I could have you on as a guest. I could talk about that for about an hour.
Fantastic.
KFC, so is that the initials or is that an actual name? KFC.
I remember being at church once and the baby was christened George Michael.
That is so good.
And I did go to school with someone, I'm sorry, Ivor, who was called Ivor Broom.
Ivor Broom.
And my auntie knew someone who was called Iona McIntosh.
Iona McIntosh. That's
true. No, it's absolutely the same.
Wow.
Absolutely true.
It's amazing.
And also, one of my auntie's friends was called Tracy, and she married someone called Mr. Tracy, so she became Tracy Tracy.
Tracy Tracy. It's like when Taylor Swift was going out with Taylor Lautner. This was Hollywood news a few years ago. And it was like, well, they can't get married because they're both be Taylor Lautner. I mean, what would you do? They're both big names. It's a worry.
It is a worry.
But there are names that are being phased out as well, isn't it? Gary is one of them. Apparently Gary, nobody's been called Gary in the last 10 years or something. It could be phased out, one of these names that we never see again.
Yeah.
How would you feel about that?
Stephen is not very popular.
Is it not?
No, apparently not.
I was saying, we were talking about names earlier, and I was saying Stephen really suits Stephen.
Oh,
and you wouldn't suit Steve.
No, I hate being called Steve.
Yes, that came out, yes. But Stephen does suit you. It's a lovely name.
Yeah.
So do keep them coming, because it's very heavy, isn't it? Everything that's going
also,
on.
about not abbreviating names, spelling names differently. Right,
yes.
I mean, have a look at this. As an example, if you're on the radio, it's KVIIILYN. Guess what that is?
Well, I know what it is. Do you want me to answer?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Caitlin. So it's the Roman numerals
for 8.
8. So K, 8, and then Lyn, Lyn. It's horrendous. And can I just say, this is what Stephen was doing when we passed him this. He went, "What's that then?" For about 2 minutes, didn't you?
Couldn't work it out at all.
No, you couldn't.
I do think there's lots of
dreadful.
There's lots of very odd spelling. People. There was someone actually, wasn't there? I think he was in the Sun yesterday. A little video saying, that she regretted the fact she called her child something. It was like a normal name, but it was she wanted to call them Megan, but she then called them Legan or something because she just wanted to be different.
Yeah, and I think people regret that, later on. So yeah, we are talking about the worst baby names of 2022 and also off-the-wall spellings as well. I just want to share this one with you. Parents of, this is pronounced Absidy, but it's spelt A-B-C-D-E, like the first 5 letters of the alphabet, yeah. Absidy.
Well, you couldn't get it.
For me, that takes number 1.
My grandmother, when my mother was pregnant with my brother, it's very important that you give your children names that they're not going to be embarrassed by.
Have you heard that rule?
She called her 2 sons Reginald and Edgar, and they both hated it.
Oh no, I think they're really cute names. But have you heard that rule that you should choose names that would sound good as a Prime Minister?
No, I've never heard that.
That's a rule. I'm not sure Ellie would, really. I don't know if it carries. Sorry, Mum. Mum's probably watching now, but...
Yeah, you can't...
I'm not sure it carries.
Yes, but you're not Ellie.
Well, I'm not Ellie. That's the point, isn't it? Yeah.
What are you?
Elizabeth.
And does that sound good as a Prime Minister?
It does.
Well, I don't know that it does anymore.
Maybe I should have... Well, no. It was good to be called Elizabeth about a month ago.
It was,
And then we had a poor Queen passed away, and now Liz Truss. I mean... Probably best I stick with Ellie, I think.
I think so, yeah.
Anyway, digressing.
Yes, we are digressing, but send your thoughts in, please.
Yes.
GBNews at gbnews.uk. We want something to smile about today.
Need it.
Because we need it. Let's look at the papers for you. The Times leads on Johnson's renewed leadership bid. Senior party officials apparently fear that it will prove fatal.
Meanwhile, The Guardian focuses on the upcoming Conservative Party leadership race as various factions prepare to go to war.
Just what the country needs. The Mail suggests a potential pact could be formed between Boris and Rishi to promote party unity.
The Telegraph leads on former Chancellor Rishi Sunak's bid to secure the majority of Tory MPs.
Well, let's go through some of those this morning with author and broadcaster Nicky Hodgson and the Deputy Editor of Conservative Home, Henry Hill. Good to see you both this morning. Henry, let's start with The Guardian, should we? And Tory tribes go to war, it says.
Yeah, so obviously all of the newspapers are focusing on the Tory leadership election. It's gearing up to be an absolute nightmare, even though, very sensibly, they've decided to make it an awful lot shorter than the last one, which is the sort of 8-week death march, which we had to cover in excruciating detail. But basically the problem for the Tories is that it's now very, very divided into camps which really don't like each other very much, and no one is more at the centre of this than Boris Johnson. He has his die-hard supporters, who are very happy to see him come back, are convinced he should never have been got rid of in the first place. But there are also dozens at least of Tory MPs who are absolutely horrified at the prospect of him coming back. You've got the 50, 60 people who resigned from his government less than 3 months ago, and you've got people who think he's actually unfit for office, and they're going to be put in a deeply invidious position. So, no, absolutely, I think if you're The Guardian, you're probably going to hugely enjoy the upcoming Conservative leadership contest, but I'm not sure you will if you're a Conservative.
No. What do you make of it, Nicky?
Oh my goodness. Well, the Eye is sort of saying this morning that Sunak is definitely in the lead from Johnson, and that actually there's nothing to worry about. There's quite a lot of that going around, actually, despite all the kind of hype about Boris coming back.
I mean, he hasn't declared.
Well, he hasn't declared, but, you know, if you're getting news of phone calls being made and all the rest of it, that's probably leaked information that's probably quite accurate. And I can just imagine him, you know, doing his Cincinnatus Act. In his mind, he's already got a fantasy that he can come in and rescue the country again. I'm sure his ego is in an overdrive right now. But I think what's important to remember is, as Henry points out, the fact that, you know, so many of his MPs resigned, you know, prorogued Parliament, lied to the Queen, got investigated for Partygate, was fined. You know, the only Prime Minister...
Any of that matter?
Well, it must do, surely, because, you know, the reason why we have had, you know, a very poor choice of Prime Minister, Liz Truss, in power is because of this kind of decline of standards in the Tory party that has become... It's been allowed by Boris's behaviour, you know. It's just like, turn the other cheek, this is okay. Turn the other cheek, this is okay. But, you know, and it's not like he kind of did loads of fantastic things for the country either. I mean, think about the pandemic. He didn't take action quick enough, and then we had 180,000 deaths, which was 9 times what was first prophesied as a good amount of people.
Well, first country to get jabs in the arms and all that sort of
stuff. Well, okay, that maybe is one thing that was a benefit of having Boris in power. But I just think there are so many examples of where he isn't fit for office. And also, very importantly, he's still under investigation, and surely that would overshadow another term as Prime Minister.
And this has been picked up by The Guardian as well, Henry. This is page 7 of The Guardian, why getting back with an ex rarely works. It picks up on the same issue as you, Nicky, that these issues haven't gone away. We've got to remember it's only been 6 weeks. I mean, the problems are still there, but it must also be tempting to so many Tory MPs, definitely allies of Boris Johnson, that he was an election winner.
Well, he was, but he was an election winner all the way back in the dark ages in 2019, you know, which is a lifetime ago at this point, politically and otherwise. And they need to understand that he is fundamentally a very different proposition now. He's much more divisive. People know about him. But also, as the papers are saying, all of those scandals that are no longer on the front pages because he went to the backbenches, they would come back. And actually, the most serious one, I think, is actually the parliamentary investigation into whether or not he lied to the House of Commons. Because if he comes back and the committee hands down a serious judgment, he could get suspended from the House of Commons, and that means that he could be open to a recall election, which is a by-election triggered by voters, in a seat in which he's got a 4,000 majority. So the Tories are inviting this absurd situation where either they need to vote to kill the inquiry, and look how that worked when they did it with Owen Paterson at the end of last year, or Boris Johnson potentially comes back as Prime Minister and Tory leader and then loses a by-election. It really is hard to describe how badly a second Boris Johnson premiership could go wrong.
Well, the Mail is talking about a unification of number 10 and number 11, as was Boris and Rishi getting back together. But obviously it wouldn't be Boris in number 11, would it? So it'd have to be him as PM and Rishi in number 11 again.
Yeah, so I think the problem with this idea is that, again, less than 2 months ago, Rishi Sunak said that he didn't think Boris Johnson was fit to be Prime Minister. Now, 40 days in the desert was good for Jesus, but I'm not entirely sure it's going to be enough to convince the nation that Boris Johnson has rehabilitated himself. So what's Rishi Sunak going to say in this situation when any journalist says, why is Boris Johnson now fit to be Prime Minister? He doesn't have an answer, so I really don't think he can go for that kind of arrangement.
I'm surprised that I don't know if your views reflect Conservative Home's views, but I'm a bit surprised that you're quite so anti-Boris, in that, whatever else, he's a vote winner.
Well, he was a vote winner in the past. I think ultimately Boris Johnson was a better vote winner as a London mayor than he was really as a Conservative leader. But as a Conservative leader, he won on a very specific set of policies. He was going to give away more money, spend more money, invest in the Red Wall. If he becomes Prime Minister, whoever becomes Prime Minister, the first thing they're going to have to do is pass 20-ish billion of spending cuts or tax rises. Now that's not something Boris Johnson can sell to voters, right? Boris Johnson was popular on a completely different prospectus, and the question you have to ask is, will voters like Boris Johnson, if he's cutting school budgets and freezing nurses' pay? And I don't think they will.
Well, what people are looking for now is stability, and some people would say, on the big issues, on big things that matter, such as Brexit, on COVID, and getting jabs in arms in terms of the Ukraine war, Boris was a strong leader. He made big decisions.
Okay, well, I think everyone would have supported Ukraine, and I don't think there's any suggestion that even if we have a Labour government or whatever else, that there'll be any change in the government's Ukraine policy. The jabs thing was an amazing achievement, and I don't think anyone takes that away from him. But the absolutely most important thing at the moment is the economy. After the mini-budget, the markets are going to be watching what the government does with huge concern. The only way Jeremy Hunt calmed them down in the first place was by promising this very politically painful package of cuts. Now, if there's any suggestion that Boris Johnson is going to destabilise that, derail that, delay that, that means that the markets could go haywire again, and that means more pain on mortgages, that means more pain for pensions. So the stakes are really high, and the issues that matter aren't playing to his strengths.
Meanwhile, Nikki, in the Times, could he be scuppered by this claim that staff in number 10 are ready to testify against him when it comes back to that dreaded term Partygate?
Well, it is happening. That's the point. The inquiry has been underway, and the Privileges Committee will begin its hearings next month. So people will be testifying. Boris himself will testify at some point as well, which could go terribly wrong again. He doesn't have the best record for telling the truth on the record. So, the committee is going to begin hearing evidence in November. It will hold public sessions 3 times a week. There will be so much scrutiny on this again, and particularly scrutiny if he is leader. If he just kind of sits as a backbencher, people won't really care, because they'll think, well, that's all, like you said, they'll think it's over, we're past it, they've just got to go through this procedurally. But if he is leader, I don't see how the front pages will be covering anything else.
Do you think the timing of this is significant as well? It's almost as though if this happened in 6 months' time, once this investigation has passed, there could be space for a Boris comeback. But I'm getting a sense from you that you feel as if it's too soon.
I just don't understand why he's taking the risk. That is so reckless,
Well, he's not yet, though, is he?
Well, okay, we think he is.
He's dipping his toe in the water.
Let's find out. But again, it's that ego-driven Boris, isn't it? It's not thinking about what's best for the country, what's going to win voters, what's going to stabilise things. He's thinking, how's he going to have another moment of victory?
In terms of Rishi Sunak, do you think he's the best idea for the country? Even if because he's not an election winner in the same sense. He's no track record of that, but also that he is deeply unpopular in some parts of the Conservative Party. Does that matter?
Obviously, I would dearly love for there to be a politician who is not unpopular with any part of the Tory party and is a proven election winner, but there isn't one in the race. So you've got to choose from what you've got. You've basically got 3 options: Penny Mordaunt, Rishi Sunak, and Boris Johnson, probably. And of those 3, I think Rishi Sunak is probably the one who's best suited to the moment that we're in, because he will come into power. He's been in the Treasury for a long time, and he'll at least be able to get to grips with the basics of the economic situation, and he's a very good communicator. So I think I think he probably has the best chance of communicating to voters what will be a very painful and quite unpopular programme of measures. Now, is that ideal? No, but based on where we are and the challenge facing the government over the next 2 years if they put off a general election, I think he is the best qualified candidate for the job.
Okay.
And should we have a word on Penny Mordaunt as well? Do we think that she would reach that 100 MP threshold?
It's very hard to see how. Apparently Rishi is already there. I think the names are about 97, but if Rishi's over it, the party would have to divide almost equally for all three to cross it, and I suspect that if Boris declares, he and Rishi will both comfortably get over 120, which leaves her without space.
Yeah.
Remarkable.
Let's have a look at the Telegraph, should we? And throw this out to both of you. But I mean, Liz Truss is being allowed to, so they claim this annual allowance, which is £115,000 for sort of expenses. So she shouldn't get paid it, she can claim it back. Which I suppose is fair enough. But also allowed to hand out honours, resignation honours.
She should refuse to do this.
She absolutely should.
Absolutely. I mean, I am, as a defender of the honours system, this pains me enormously when this kind of nonsense happens. But I think given what's happened over the last few years, we should probably reform it so that resignation honours only come in if you've served more than like 5 years. Because normally it's a perfectly good idea. You know, if you've actually served your country for say 5, 8 years, you know, then it makes sense. You're leaving, you get to put some people in the House of Lords, that's all fine. But she has been in office for about 2 months, so she should. Just refuse to do it. She should decline the opportunity and resign.
What do you think, Nikki?
I absolutely agree. I don't know how she can get away with doing it. And, well, I suppose it depends what she's going to go on and do next, but just smacks of cronyism to me. It's not a good idea.
Yeah, well, you do think, what can she possibly do next? The trouble is, you sort of think, we're going to see Lord Kwasi Kwarteng, aren't we, if she does it?
I mean, probably at some point, which he can offer his opinions on the economy from the House of Lords, which will be very interesting, I'm sure.
Anyway, well, look, we should catch up with you two a little bit later on. Henry, Nikki, thank you both very much indeed.